Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another album review. My name is Christian Eschbach. All right, folks, take two on this one. Tracy Chapman Crossroads. My Tracy paid $5 for this used. She's a she's a big Tracy Chapman fan, so when she found the whole collection available on compact disc, she went out and bought the whole collection on compact disc. Okay, so that's kind of where this kind of ends with me being all sweet and blah blah blah. This album was released in 1989, so it was released a year after the previous album I reviewed. And to me, this is not a radical change from her previous album, but radical within the context of what her first album was. One of the things I absolutely loved about her first album was how poetic it was. You know, one of the things I mentioned during the review was that it reminded me of the black women that used to come over from Detroit to do poetry slams here in Windsor. And that was because, one, the content, two, the poetic verse of the lyrical structure, and the fact that it wasn't a standard verse chorus format. And there is Pandora. Give me a second, folks. The camera's not my fault, it's moving. Hold on. Someone is being a little attention whore. Yes. So we're going to put you on camera on blast for doing it again every time, it feels like, now that I'm recording here. All right, so let's see how this goes. So hit the like button just for Oh, and of course off the lap. So hit a like button just for Pandora being on the screen. Also tell me how cute my kitty is in the comments. Okay. She keeps insisting on rubbing on the tripod now. Okay, let's get into the album itself. Now that I've gotten that whole part out of the way, we had that fun interruption for my cat. So just as a quick reminder, this album is more of a standard verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus kind of thing going on, as opposed to the more free flow poetic verse of the first album, which takes a lot of the artistic element of this album away from me. This album being released a year after the previous one also makes me think that this was one of those ones that they just kind of popped it out because, you know, hey, while you're doing so well, let's get another album out. While the iron's still hot, let's get another album out. Standard record label procedures. The thing is, with some bands it works and you can do it because some bands will literally spend, you know, a year touring their first album, but that first album they have been crafting over the first 3 or 4 years of their career. And when they release their second album, it's a lot of stuff they had just started working on or were working on or had been sitting around and they hadn't finished up yet or whatnot. So the second album, you can usually get a really good second album out of the deal. Prime example, and I know I do this all the time, but is, you know, Alice Cooper. The first major label album being Love It to Death and the second one being Killer. And if you look at how it went, you know, whoa, they weren't the first two albums. Technically, Pretty's for You and Easy Action were, but that's a different discussion. Actually, Pretty's for You and Easy Action would be a comparable comparison almost in certain ways to this one versus the first album, because of how kind of almost radical a change there is in both the music and the direction. Although I really like Easy Action and I don't like this album. Okay, so we got Crossroads, which I thought was eh. Bridges, which I thought was eh. Freedom Now. That was the first song on this album to kind of catch my attention and make me go, oh, I like that one. Material World, meh. Be Careful of My Heart, I enjoyed that one. I thought that one was a good one too. Subsidy, eh. Born to Fight, eh. 100 Years, eh. This time, okay, so as much as I kind of complain about the verse, chorus, pop sensibility of this album, that is what catches me with This Time. It really does have that kind of pop sensibility to it, which makes it a little catchier and appeals to me. And then it finishes with All That You Have Is Your Soul, which I think is a fantastic song, and it's one of the more poetic songs on this album, I think. there's almost a part of me, like even listening to some of the lyrical content throughout this album, that really thinks that this album was more just a push to get an album out. It was less about the album, the content, all that wonderful stuff. All the stuff that made the first album great. And it's really weird because this album was produced by David Kirschenbaum and Tracy Chapman, which basically were the two big producers on the last album. It did have a additional producer as well, if I remember correctly, but the whole way around, even the musicianship on this album is different. It doesn't have the same artistic flow even to it. Like there really was a real art to the first album. You know, that the self-titled first album, real artistic merit. Love it, every part of it. This one just doesn't have it. It's not as bad as when Jewel decided to go all kind of dance poppy. Not as bad as that, but it kind of feels like it's almost a step wanting to go in that direction to me. I don't know, folks. Those are my thoughts, my opinions, my views. Let me know what you think. That's what the comment section is for. Drop me a line down below. Am I being too hard on this album? I don't know. Maybe I am. I expected better from her after the first one. No. Anyways, also like button, subscribe button, bell for notifications. When you're down in the comments, you should see a couple links down there. Otherwise, folks, peace, love, take care.